Excellent. Well, glad to have you all here. Hope you enjoy lunch. Thank you again to Colliers for providing that, and to Cody and Shad. All right, we have a special treat today. We have the opportunity to hear from Cyd Tetro. Cyd is an incredible entrepreneur, and we are featuring her in our Featured Founders series today. She'll be interviewed by our very own Rebecca Palmer, who is a great journalist and over PR. And so let's welcome them both to the stage.
Hey, thank you so much, Darren. Let's switch places here. You get the blue fuzzy couch.
Perfect.
So let me start off by telling you guys a little bit about Cydni. She has spent her career creating products for some of the biggest companies you might have heard of, Fortune 500s, Disney, Marvel, MLB. I had a list. MLS, Target, Walmart. Currently, she has actually so many projects going on, I can't even keep up. But she's on the faculty for the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. She's the co-founder of Women Tech Council. You guys remember Sarah we met a couple months ago. This is her co-founder. Also, she has started a new venture called Forge DX, which has to do with digital simulation. I'm not completely clear on what that is. So did I get all that right?
Yep, that sounds good. Is
Right.
my mic on? Okay.
Yeah, you're mic'd.
Because I lost my voice.
So, looking over your career, just looking at your LinkedIn, I was so impressed. You've had so many opportunities and taken advantage of those opportunities, but it seems to be really well. So talk to us about how you've been able to do that.
Yeah, so as she said, I've had the really unique opportunity to spend my career at the intersection of technology and launching products. So I did my undergrad in computer science, and then I did my MBA. And so I've always kind of sat in that space of how do you create products that people will actually use and then get them to market. And over the course of that, I've had the opportunity to do a lot of different things. So from being at big companies to being at startups. I spent about 5 years at Disney and Imagineering doing technology commercialization. I launched a venture-backed startup where I raised a bunch of money that we eventually sold. And I'm doing another company today in that space, and kind of been everywhere from business to consumer to business to business. But the one thread that kind of weaves through my career are a couple of things. One is that of all of the opportunities that I've found as I've developed my career have come to me because of the network that I built. And I think that's all. And as I look back, it's been a really interesting thing that has happened where as I've dove into one opportunity. So I have a couple of principles that I live by. One of those principles that I live by as I work with teams is that no matter who I work with, and whenever we leave that team, I want them to be able to say, if I had the opportunity to work with Cyd again, I would work with her. And I hold myself to that standard. When people leave, if I ask them to come back and work with me, would they want to? And what I found is, because that means I did a couple of things really well. I leveraged their talents. I built a team that could deliver. I built a vision that someone believed in. And we did something that everyone believed was going to, in whatever aspect, change the world and make an impact. And if someone walks away from that, then when I need their help years later, or I can help them, we will be connected. Now, I will say when I very first started my career, I hadn't really thought that deeply about it. But as I had the opportunity to run lots of teams and careers, my perspective on that has really deepened. Because it is ultimately the teams around you that make you successful. It's not you. It's never one person. It's all of the people around you that actually drive success. So you have to recognize that and want people with you. And in turn, what ends up happening is that you get access to opportunities that you never even imagined would be possible, that you actually didn't think about. And I think that's kind of how my career evolved. I mentioned that I went to Disney.
Yeah, tell us about how that all came about.
Yeah, so Disney's an interesting story. Okay, so I work in enterprise B2B. I decided that I should go work in startup land, so I jumped into a startup. We'd raised $58 million. Eventually, we sold that. Part of it was sold to Ancestry, or part of it became the Microsoft office that is here in Utah, and part of it actually became the Proofpoint office. They have about 600 or 700 engineers here. And I'd been at that company for a while, and I had left, and I'd done another company, a social networking company, in the middle of that. And I was coming off of that, And I really didn't know what I was going to go do. I'm like, I don't know. What opportunity do I take? Do I go take another executive role in a company? Do I start my own company? And one of the gentlemen that was the CTO with me when I was at the company Next Page that we eventually sold, he and I had worked together for a very long time. And he had left to go head up Disney research. And he'd been there a couple of years. And I was coming off a company, and Tom and I were talking. And he said, Sid, I'm starting this Entrepreneur in Residence program at Disney in Imagineering and Disney Research. And it's brand new, and no one's ever done it before. We've never hired anyone before. And I actually can't tell you exactly what it looks like, how successful it will be, or where it will go, but you want to come down and talk to us.
Wow.
And I said, well, that's kind of interesting. Maybe I will come down and talk to you. So I flew down on a Friday, and I met with him and a bunch of the other people there. So Ed Capnell, who was at Pixar, right? He started a lab there. He started the lab at Disney Research. And the intent was, how do you get all of these brilliant researchers? So there was a lab tied to Carnegie Mellon, one tied to ETH in Switzerland, one tied to MIT and Harvard, and then one in all of our product divisions, Interactive, Pixar. And the intent was to solve problems the Disney company faces over the next decade. Think robotics, computer vision, big data problems, 3D modeling. How do fireworks not create, more chemicals? How do you actually, like we did projects like, how do you organize a buffet to drive healthy eating, right? So all sorts of, like anything that you can think about that impacted that. So I flew down, I met with them, and a couple days later, Tom called and he said, okay, Sid, you can have the job, and just know we have no idea where this is going. And we don't know if it's 3 months or 6 months or a year, or exactly what you'll work on. And I said, I have no idea when I'll have another opportunity to go work there, and so I'm going to jump. And so I did, and I went all in. And I ended up spending just over 5 years doing all sorts of amazing projects. And really, it was about building businesses that were coming out of this technology, research that we were doing, and figuring out what business units would fund them, building those, and then launching them into everything from theme parks to ESPN to ABC to Disney Interactive.
That is so interesting, such a cool opportunity. And it's cool to hear about how a company as big as Disney has these little startup projects. Before talking to you, I didn't even know that was an option. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about some of the products that you created there. Everything from how to get started and, perhaps you had mentioned kind of a systematic way to get product validation in the market. So can you, maybe tell us the story of one of those products and how that went?
So like many of you, right, in startup land, and I think this is true whether you're in large company or small company, it's all about de-risking, right? It's all about how can I make sure that something I build, someone's going to buy before I launch it. That's the name of the game. Because it's not worth spending millions of dollars to go build something that you're not sure someone will buy when you release it. And so you hear all about the things like Nail It and Scale It and all of those things. The guy who originally invented Nail It and Scale It, Frank Robinson, was one of the guys that I learned product validation from years ago. So we went on the road for months to go validate products. And I'll tell you a couple of stories. And I am a firm believer in everything about validation. So a couple of rules I love about validation. One is you can never validate with friends and family because they lie to you. Okay?
Yeah,
they like
I think
you,
so.
right? They want you to be successful. And they're like, I'm totally buying your product. Okay, that's out. They don't count. The other thing about validation is that anyone in your company that has the ability to say, no, we're not funding that, or no, I don't believe you, has to be in the room for validation. Because the founders, the people who hold the money, if it's not you, anyone who can say no has to be with you in validation. They have to hear the information firsthand, they have to get the data, and they have to help you verify. And
so
if they're
you're talking about validation interviews?
Interviews, customer meetings, anytime you're going to get feedback about if that product is right. Because people don't believe your data. They'll say, oh, yep, I know you heard that. That's not what they really meant. They really meant something else. And what you heard is wrong. And it happens time and time again. And so when you're going to go to market and you got to validate a product, everyone's in the room that needs to hear. There's an IDEO video that we show in one of the Babson classes that I teach. And it talks about the exact same thing, right? You actually have to go, they went to observe how children brush their teeth in order to create a product. It's the same effect. Everyone's in the room. They're like, we're sitting in the bathroom with a 5-year-old boy brushing his teeth to figure out the new design of toothbrushes. And they're doing that because you need this firsthand experience. So years ago when we were doing our document management company, we were really sure that we had a product that could sell. And so we were doing validation all over the country. And I was in a company in San Francisco, and they had 2,000 employees. And our business model at the time required that I have all 2,000 people buy the product. Okay, so that's what we're validating. And in the room, I've got the business owner, I've got the buyer, I've got the user, and I have 10 other people. And I stand up and I give the pitch. Like, this is what the product does, this is its limitation, this is how it works, these are its limitations. I'll tell you why I believe in limitations and justification. But I walk through what it will do, what it won't do, and then I get to justification and procurement. And I say to the two guys in the room, like, okay, so who will use the product and how will they use it? And the two people look at each other, and the one guy says, I think one person in my department will use it, and the other one says, I'm not sure anyone in mine will. And up until that point, every head in the group nodded that I was solving their business problem, that the product looked right, and that it was everything it was supposed to be. And they looked at each other, and when they answered that, and this became a series of meetings, it told us that our business model was out the door, right? Like, you had to throw it out. There was no way we were getting 2,000 seats, which meant my investment wasn't going to make sense for the product we were building. Over the course, so my magic number is 13. If I get 13 people who look exactly the same, I get enough data that tells me if it's validated. By exactly the same, I mean back to your target segment conversation this morning, they're like exactly the same. They have the same motivations, the same job titles, they're in the same function. When you get those people, all the other data normalizes. So after a series of those meetings, we determined that we couldn't go spend millions of dollars to build the product because we were never going to get it paid for. And so we backed up and we completely pivoted the product to eventually the thing that we built that got acquired by Proofpoint. But it was all from that validation.
Wow.
And I've had that same experience every time. My 3D printing company that we talked a little bit about. So before the company I'm in now, I decided to start a 3D printing company. And we were saving the world by making you all superheroes. So you could become Iron Man or Captain America. And so we did license deals with the Marvel and with Star Wars. You could become a stormtrooper, like your helmet came off, it was your face. This is really cool. Really or cool. A Jedi, or you could be we went to the Super Bowl, we did NFL players, Major League Baseball players. And when we were starting the company, we thought it was a really good idea, but 3D printing was really new. But the thing that we knew is that everyone wanted to be part of their favorite story. So back to the conversations you had earlier, it's all about the ability to tell stories. It's about the ability to put someone into the emotional environment. So we were doing that, right? You want to become part of your favorite storyline. I can make you Captain America. My brother, whose name is Steve Rogers, thinks he is, and now he can be one. Right? So we built this whole product line. But before we decided to go actually build all of the software we needed, which was take high-resolution 3D scans of your face, merge those into characters, right? Because Iron Man's helmet actually has to morph to all of your face shapes. You're not the same. So we had to build a whole technology platform to do that.
Wow.
But before we built it, we actually went and pitched Disney on taking the Marvel license and closed that before we built our software.
Oh, wow.
Because
it's like
validation,
ultimate.
it's so expensive, right? And if someone doesn't believe in what you're doing, and if you can't close the first deals, because the secret to product validation isn't that you're asking people if it's a good idea, it's that you're committing them to pipeline. Right?
Yeah.
So true validation is revenue. It has nothing to do with whether or not people like it.
Awesome,
but it's an important thing that we forget, right? We often think that validation is like user testing. Can people use this? And when they say yes, it means they will buy. But that's not validation. Validation is, I'm not ready to launch, but you're willing to commit your money so that when I do launch, you will buy. And if you don't do validation that way, then everything that you built is wrong because you didn't actually tie it to dollars.
So it's like getting your true first users, people who really will be your first users, not people who are like your first users. So you're building them into your sales pipeline, even in that idea stage.
Exactly. And that's right? What you're saying to them. You're like, look, we think that you're the customer that we're building this product for, and we want to know if there's gaps, and if there are, we're going to fix them. And if not, we want you to commit that when we come to the next round that you're going to use it, you're going to test it, and I'm going to keep moving you through. And the company that we built around NextPage, the one that we pivoted to, that's how we built our entire pipeline, is by committing those customers in validation, and then they went through every phase of us until they ultimately rolled it into implementation.
That is so inspiring. That's awesome. So do you think do you use a methodology like, we really like lean methodology here. Or do you have kind of a specific one that you've developed for validation?
So back to my friend Frank Robinson, it's always a more from his core stuff. Because I believe in the consistency of the data. So we always, we always tell what we're doing. We always declare the business problems. We always show you something about what the product looks like. It can be a visualization, it can be a PowerPoint. But the most important thing that you do after that is you tell people what it won't do. So our sales hats in the room are like, don't tell people what it doesn't do, they might not buy. That's the wrong statement. Tell people what it doesn't do so you actually know if their revenue is real. Right? Because if you don't tell people what something's missing, then they think it has it. And then when you're months down the road and they realize it doesn't, they won't purchase. So our limitations discussion was always bounded by the debates we were having on product roadmap for minimum viable product. We don't think we can do that integration. It's too expensive. Oh, well, wonder if we tell people it's not available in version 1, it will come in version 2, what will they say? So we always do limitations. Then we always ask procurement and justification. Who would use it? Why would they buy? If I'm seeking pricing discussions, I'll actually ask people to tell me other products that they think this product would fit inside. So someone might not be able to tell you, I'll pay $50,000 for this or $100, but they can tell you how they see its value similar to other things they're purchasing. Right? Oh, I do a subscription to Office 365, cost me $50 a user a month. Oh, okay, I get where I sit. People are really good at that. And then my validation, my final 2 questions are always, when you walk out of this room and someone says, what did you learn about, how will you describe my product? It does the first best message at giving you marketing. That actually tells you how big of a gap there was. If they tell you what exactly you thought your sold, you're like, yes, I did it right. And if they don't, you're like, oh, we got to go back to the drawing board. They didn't think I'm selling them anything that I thought. And then the other one is we ask a baseball metaphor. So was that a single, a double, triple, strikeout? Where did it sit? Because even if you don't play baseball, everyone gets the baseball metaphor. And so someone will say it's a double, and then we ask the question, what would make it a home run? And it tells me 2 metrics that I track on every account. The buy as is, so will they buy the MVP I just put in front of them, or their buy could be if. If I'm willing to invest in those features, they then would buy, and can I get it to something that will be consistent enough to drive revenue?
Oh, that's an awesome process. I hope some of you are taking notes. I'm going to take notes later when I rewatch the video.
Great.
So tell me about some failures you might have had. I mean, you have to kind of become friends with failure as a startup owner, right? Is that your experience in the audience? So have you ever had a failure?
Oh, yes, right. Life is full of more failures than success when it comes to building companies and launching things. So I'm going to give you 2 different stories from different perspectives. So when we were building the 3D printing company, I was raising capital, and I'd raised millions of dollars in, and we were headed into and I was headed in to raise more capital. So as a female founder, my chance of raising money is really small. I have like a less than 3% shot of raising money for my startup. That's just what all the data tells you.
Wow.
So mathematically, I totally get what that meant. I talked to all my friends who are investors, right? And a number of them had invested in us. But the conversation still doesn't change the fact that raising money was going to be hard. So when you think about that, you're like, okay, so I'm going to have to do 50 meetings or 100 meetings to probably find investors who invest in my deal. Now, compound that with the fact that the deal I was raising money for wasn't a straight SaaS system, right? I had 3D printing technology, right, which meant physical things inside of there, and some hardware components, which makes my business way more hard to raise funding than if I go straight SaaS. It's just the nature of the business. So I'm out there so we decided to go raise money. The thing that you don't realize is when people tell you those numbers is how hard it is not only to go do the pitches, but to have all those people tell you that you don't fit their investment thesis and they won't give you money.
Right, that rejection.
That's right. It's because it is constant rejection. You actually end up in this mode where you're like, okay, people are going to reject me every day. And it's normally true of every person I've ever seen raise money. You only hear the stories about the guy who annoyingly made one pitch and got his money. That's not the majority of us. Right? The majority of us don't get, hey, one pitch and I was fully funded. Right? You talk to a lot of people. You build relationships and you syndicate. And so you have to figure out and they actually call it grit, right? It's that passion and that determination. You have to figure out where that stands for you, because you're going to pick up the phone and you're going to have that rejection every day, and you have to figure out how to still make your company work and power through and adapt to that and be okay that someone doesn't like the decisions you made on business model, or they don't like that you don't match their investment thesis, right? Or you should have done this or this different, because that's what that means. So for me, I had to get to a place where I was still confident enough in my skills and my team and where we were headed to keep pushing every day, even though that rejection was in front of me. And there were times where you're like, I'm actually not going to read email before I get to work, because I'm pretty sure someone's going to have told me no.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. When you're getting a lot of rejection, how do you figure out whether to stay on course or to listen to what the things that people are saying and change your path? Or how did you do that?
Well, so you're always pivoting, right? The nature of a startup is you never set course and you're just there. You're always getting information and learning and adapting. But you really have to believe that no matter what obstacle is in front of you, you're going to make it go. Like, that is a required mindset, because you're going to be faced. I often say that in startups, there's a crisis every day. Right? Every day, something's blowing up. Every day. Right? And you're like, okay, I'm going to solve a problem every day. And you have to be okay with that. I now say that the number one skill I hire for are creative problem solvers. I need you in real time, in on-demand situations, to solve problems, not create more obstacles, and be willing to get all the way through that. So when I hire talent, that's one of my very most important skill sets, is to do that.
Oh, that is great advice. Thank you. So we just have a few minutes. I want to get to audience questions, but can you tell us a counterpart to that, something really successful you've been able to do?
As I look over my career, I've had lots of amazing opportunities that have been, whether it was, individual products that we launched. Like when I was at Disney, how many of you have seen World of Color? So there was one of our, now you'll have to go to Disneyland and see like Pixar Fest and World of Color. But World of Color, I call it Bellagio on steroids, because it's like a water show, but with light and fire and all sorts of things. We developed, when Cars Land opened, a programmable LED ear hat. So if everyone wore the Mickey ear hats, it glows with the show. So it's fully programmable, because at Disney, everything's about story. And so you want every person to be part of a storyline. And at nighttime spectaculars, how do you find and make people part of a storyline, not just a spectator? And so we decided that if we made them part of the magic, we put ear hats on them that made them part of the show, it would completely change the dynamic of that. And it was the night that we launched it, at the PR night, there were 3,000 people with Mickey ear hats on watching the World of Color. It was amazing. You could feel the emotion of everyone being part of that show come in. And it's moments like that where you fully realize how powerful the intersection of technology and experience can be when done well. And so for me, all of those moments kind of build together, right? It was super cool to have a product that we took to the Super Bowl and the World Series, right? At the Super Bowl and World Series, for our 3D printing product, 95% of the people who came through our experience would buy at an ASP of $200, right? And if I could have repeated that in every instance everywhere, right, not just at the Super Bowl, that's an amazing conversion. But regardless, the opportunity to be there and see those transformative experiences, right? For me, that's how powerful technology is, when it intersects with what people really want to do and who they believe they are, and ways that it changes either how they feel or what opportunities they have. That's what I love about technology.
Oh, that is so cool. It's just that Disney story, so inspiring. What must that have been like? It's so cool.
Yeah, it was amazing.
So let's open it up for audience questions. And remember, please wait for the mic so we can get you on the recording. Where's Seth? He always has good questions.
Seth's the starter question guy.
I was curious about what your experience has been with, limited resources. Like, where or what are ways that you found to be able to just stretch resources way further than you thought you could go? Because, I don't know, that's something I encounter with a lot of the companies we're working with all the time?
That's a really great question, because resources are always the limiting factor. So I think that there's two things that balance that. One is you got to get really creative about how you find resources and how you use them. And the other one is always on prioritization. So oftentimes in startups and companies that I talk to, they'll tell me their business plan, and then they'll tell me where they're building product roadmap. And what you find is that they're solving all of the problems that exist in steady state. When I have 1 million users, the product's going to do all of these things. When I have 10,000 people on it. So they solve these problems that they don't have yet. I find on building resources, you got to have a vision, you got to have a product roadmap, but you have to solve the problems that come first. My first problem is my first user, my first 5 users, my first 100 users. How do I make sure someone comes back to the platform and they don't abandon it? Because I'm going to have different problems. So oftentimes the resource question is best addressed by what problem I have to solve first, instead of solving the entire platform problem along the way. Now, I'm a big fan of being as creative as possible when it comes to resources. I'll give you a quick example. I decided about 6 weeks before CES a couple of years ago, because CES had decided to launch these 3D printing areas. I decided I should be at CES because everyone I knew in the 3D printing world was going to be there. And I had almost no budget. But we called the CES 4 weeks before, and they said, you know what, one of the booths just canceled. We'll give it to you. I think I paid like $4 grand for the booth. I'm like, okay, we're going to go. It happens to be the booth was the very end booth in the very best location in the entire 3D printing corridor.
Wow.
So I don't know how I got that, but I was all up for it. And so then I decided that what I would do with my space is make it half meeting space and half product space. And we had enough stuff that our stuff could look cool in the space. But when I decided to make it meeting space, this is like part of my creativity. Right? So I never go to a trade show unless I can book all of my appointments. So for me, trade shows are only valuable because I don't have to travel to 1,000 cities. I got to go to one city and everyone comes to me. So I always optimize that. And for me, this is part of like, how do you not walk a trade show floor, but like creatively get there? Ends up happening that at that time I needed to finish my deals with Walmart. I needed my Target deal. I was dealing with Toys R Us. I was doing deals with Hasbro and all of the brand guys. And everyone goes to CES. And they're all walking the show floor, but none of them have booths. So they actually also needed meeting spaces. So all the execs at Walmart asked if they could use my space to host their meetings. I'm like, absolutely, right? Hang out, please, in my booth, right, for my little startup company and use our space. And so what I find is you have to get really creative, right? Every time you go spend a resource, you maximize it, every possible bit. You don't travel to one place to do one meeting. You travel to do 10 meetings. You don't go to a trade show just to go look around. You go to a trade show because you're going to go to 15 meetings. And you're going to close every deal that you possibly can do. You're going to do all that legwork up front. And you're going to negotiate and try to be as kind of creative as you can while spending the least amount of money. Just as an example, big companies, they pay for all of the analyst firms. I'm a huge proponent of the analyst firms, but startups don't have the money to pay for that. But those guys need to know about you. They'll take the meetings, they'll listen to your pitch, they'll put you in the 4x4s if you're an enterprise software company because they need to know about you. So it's all about being scrappy, right? And it's all about like just doing the work, not expecting people to give you stuff, but taking whatever place you're in and just taking whatever resource you can and going after it in every case. And you know, I had the luxury in 3D printing to ride the hype wave, right? It was a big trend that was going on. People were investing in that, which meant I could get access to a lot of things. But most businesses that we build as startups are in some kind of trend. They're in some market that's rising. So figure out how to lead that. One of my favorite ways to lead a market category is to actually own the speaking circuit. So when I built, every company I've ever built, because it's basically free, except for my travel time, is to go speak and to go become the domain expert in that. When we started the 3D printing company, I spoke everywhere, at every 3D printing conference across the entire world that showed up, and it led to tremendous amount of deals. My DreamWorks deal came because they saw me keynote one of those events, and then we did an entire DreamWorks deal for the next couple of years. Happened time and time again. Show up at Comic-Con, that's how we did our Hasbro deal. Every time, all of those just led to those. Speaking is just a resource time, right? Sure, you have to travel somewhere, but all the people you want to do deals with, if you're speaking at the right place, are in the audience. They're at the shows trying to learn those things, and so you actually create a biz dev platform for that. So I'm all about how scrappy can you be, how do you create brand with spending the least amount of money, and wherever you show up using every resource possible.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Those are good ideas and a real good spirit of being scrappy and solving problems in a creative way. Do you have any more audience questions? Oh, I can't see your name. Go ahead. Next to Seth.
Hi. My name's Todd.
Hi.
So, in terms of, you get speaking engagements, you go out and you try and promote your product. Sounds engagements is like your go-to strategy for trying to get the word out there. I guess my question, you've got product, you've started validating, you've got reasonable assurance that people are interested. What is there a go-to strategy to try and get people to give a crap about what you're doing? Who cares? What do you do to get people to care that, oh, I'm doing something cool, maybe I'd want them to speak at my event?
Right. So you're asking the question that everyone always has, right, which is product adoption, right? How do I not only, I've validated, people want it, and then how do I go get more users? So clarify two things. When I speak, I never speak about my product. I always speak about market, right? Because I'm not there to pitch my product. I'm there to be the market expert, because in turn that leads to deals. So you should be very careful. It's never product pitching. On the flip side of that, the question on how you acquire customers is grounded first in the conversation you guys had in your marketing session, which is who are your customers and where are they hanging out and how am I going to reach them? Because every customer acquisition strategy is different, but grounded in the fact that you have to figure out at what point in time someone will intersect in the area that you're trying the problem that you're trying to solve, and therefore purchase your product, right? I can't go sell, just as an example, if I have a business-to-business product, chances of me creating significant lift on a Facebook platform are pretty slim, because my audience isn't there, and they're not expecting to buy a business product. And so in every one of our markets, the key to acquisition is where does the customer that you are going after hang out, and then you craft your message to reach them. And you do a bunch of tests, and then when you find one that works, that's the pour more money problem. See, marketing budgets should never be budgeted. Marketing budgets are based on repeatable acquisition strategies. Because if I can spend $5 and guarantee I get $1,000 every time, I do it all day long. I actually never stop my marketing budget. Marketing's job is lead gen, is customer acquisition, right? Its job is to create the leads, and sales jobs is to close the leads. So there's not a blanket strategy on acquisition, but it is all based on who are your customer, where are they hanging out, and where can I repeatably find them with what tactic. In that big picture that he had of all the tactics, the tactic that works for you is the one that converts that repeatable customer. And you have to experiment. There's no strategy that says all of us are the same, because it's so based on who they are and where they sit. As an example, I'll go to two quick examples, because I know we're almost out of time. So when we had the Major League Baseball license, I knew that if I showed up at FanFest for the All-Star Games, and if we were at the World Series, 95% of those guys were going to buy. Right, so that was a no-brainer. World Series, the MLB calls and asks me to show up. I'm like, yep, showing up, right? I know how to get that money every time. I'll go to Metsfield. I'll go to the Royal Stadium. Wherever it is you tell me, I show up. But during the rest of the days, when conversion's not 95%, that's where you had to create the strategies of figuring out repeatability. So that's what led us to say, so Walmart called me, and they said, hey, Sid, it was in June, late June. They said, we want you to launch in how many Walmarts can you launch in for Superhero September? Okay, I had launched my product 2 weeks before.
Oh, wow.
And the answer I gave him was, as many as you will pay for. And he said, okay, give me a number. And so we came up with a strategy, and it was a test. We ran for Superhero September, and I made Walmart pay for it. But I also decided that to get into the Walmarts, I needed a cheaper product than the $75 product I had. So we didn't know anyone at Hasbro, but I found a guy's name, called the guy at Hasbro, said, Walmart wants me to go in. You hold the global license deal for all of the Marvel toys, but I want to make a toy product, and so we figure out how to work with me to launch in September. And they were probably like, you're crazy. And they said, well, okay, let's keep talking. And we launched in September with Walmart and Hasbro. And it was a big test, right? And the test was, how many can we sell? Because if you think of a superhero toy market, how many products do you think they sell? How many like action figures could you sell a week in a Walmart? How many do you think they move? In one Walmart?
Maybe 100? I have no idea.
That would be super awesome if they sold 100. They sell a couple.
Oh,
One
okay.
store, right? Like sells a couple.
Okay.
So you're like, oh crap, how many Walmarts do I have to be in to make $1 million? That's a
Yeah.
lot of Walmarts, right? And so you're sitting there, but you're like, well, let's test it. Let's go broad into all of these Walmarts. We ended up only taking 15, but we blew all of their normal metrics out of the water. Enough so that it then led us to investment for all of the next round, to go into the Toys R Us, to then launch it into the Target stores, because we had enough data that said this marketing strategy will work in this distribution channel. And so you find yourselves having to do that. And so you asked me this question earlier, and I'm just going to come back to it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I have learned is what I call the art of the ask, which we haven't talked about a lot.
Yeah.
But I believe you should ask for as big as you want first. And I've learned that time and time again. Don't ask Walmart, like when Walmart asked me to go in, I was willing to say whatever you're willing to pay for. That's what I'm doing. And I'm not going in otherwise because they don't have the cash, right? So you have to pay for me to be there. About a year ago when we started this digital simulation platform, I wanted to deal with one of the Fortune 50 companies. And I'd been working with them, but my deal structure wasn't the right business model. And so I went to the head of the president of the company and I said, look, if we want to still work together, you have to do this multi-million-dollar deal with me, or we can't keep going. And what do I have to lose? Right? I'm currently not doing the deal that I want. I'm not making the money I want. So I might as well ask him for what I need the deal to be, because otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. And so I think you just have to be willing to commit and go for it. I asked for the multi-million-dollar deal and I got it.
Wow.
And I think you should ask every time. And someone's going to sell you no, and they're going to shut the door, and that's just fine. But if you never ask for the big ask, you'll never get it. So you should just go for it every time. Ask them for what you want, go as big as you can imagine, and then you'll eventually work your way back to something. And I think that's just true. Like, you just got to believe in it. Just go for it, ask, and then manage it from there.
Oh, thank you so much. I was going to ask you one other question, but we actually have to wrap it up now.
I talk too much. I'm sorry.
No, we love it. I'm so glad that you have great information today. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having
and
me.
thank you for putting us on your speaker circuit. I've noticed you speak pretty much everywhere, like every day. So thank you so much for coming to Rev Road.
Thanks for having me. You guys do a great job.
Let's hear it for
Darren?
Sid.
I was going to move over one.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I think that it's very clear why Sid is a thought leader, not only in the specific businesses that she's been in, but also in entrepreneurship. I hope you can see those themes come through. I definitely do. You share so many of the things that we share, that grit and appreciation for it, asking. I had a great, amazing woman teach me from New York. I asked for the world for something, and my colleagues were trying to shut me down and shush me. And she goes, I like him. You get everything you asked for. Don't ask, don't get. So
Sure.
I'm a big believer in what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
We appreciate your example and your participation here. We
Absolutely.
have a nice little gift for you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, we'd like to give you a wonderful, beautiful Rev Road bag to take
Awesome.
around with you, and a great water bottle.
Well, thanks, you guys. It's very nice of you.
And Sid, if anyone wanted to reach you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
I'm going to throw it to my Women Tech Council email address. So you spell my name CYDNI at womentechcouncil.com.
Yeah. Let's hear it again for Sid Tetro.
Thanks, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You guys are more than welcome.
All right. So lots of learning there. I hope you enjoyed it, especially the part about being where your customers are. We have a phrase here that if you want to be a part of the village, you have to be a villager. And that's really what it is, finding out where the village is and then become a villager. We've got a few things to do. First of all, you're welcome to stay and mix and mingle. I'd like to also remind you that RevU is next month on October 4th, and we'll be hearing from Dave Myers and looks like this guy, Darren Hill, on sales. So that'll be our workshop, so we're looking forward to that. And our featured founder will be Case Lawrence, who's the founder and CEO of Circus Tricks. We've got a little bit of a teaser for you to see, so if you want to go ahead and roll that, that'd be great.
I'm Case Lawrence, the founder and CEO of Circus Tricks, and I'm looking forward to being at RevU on October 4th. We're going to talk about capital strategy and raising money. We're going to talk about scale and the key elements of handling fast growth. And then finally, we're going to talk about trends in the experiential economy. I'm excited to see you at RevU on October 4th.
And they are purveyors of awesomeness. They've opened over 200 jump parks around the country and had explosive growth. It's been a really great thing. He was featured as one of the entrepreneurs of the year recently. So we're looking forward to having him here then. We hope you'll join. And today we have Rev Up. That's a weekly thing we do every Thursday from 4 to 5 p.m. Seth, did I get that right? 4 to 5 p.m. Right over here in the conference room. Many of you are welcome to come. It's where we do a deeper dive on specific items that you've heard about. So today it's going to be on minimum viable product. How do you build that? How do you quantify it? What do you do to make sure that you deliver it on time, under budget, and above spec? So with that, thank you for coming. And we always end with a ready, set, rev. Ready, set, rev.